Well, welcome back to the Middle of Culture, a very unique episode for us here. I am one of your co-hosts, Peter.
And I'm your other co-host, Eden. You could almost say this is a very special episode. Like a sitcom, we're going to teach you a life lesson. Someone will die tragically so that you get really treacly, and then you'll never talk about this episode again. Very special episode.
Which one of us is going to die tragically? And that's it, folks. I hope you feel intense pathos
Thank you.
at Eden's passing.
Thank you.
We'll wrap it up now. Oh, wait, never mind.
Thank you.
But no, this is a special episode and a unique episode for a couple reasons. Unique in that, and special in that we are both sitting in a hotel room together in San Diego, California.
We certainly are. And if anything, this is maybe the most awkward I've felt while recording this podcast, because normally I am staring at some beautiful waveforms in Audacity and or whatever I've pulled up in my browser so we can talk about something. But now I'm looking you square in the eyes.
I know.
Giving you the most intense stare I can possibly say that says, "Hello, Peter. Welcome to San Diego."
Well, thank you, Eden. And it is odd. It feels very odd. I have done this once or twice with Aubrey.
Sure.
And even then, it is still odd.
Here's the one nice thing. Editing will be a lot easier because you won't have to line up, where's the emptiness on this person's recording so that they're not talking over the other person too much. Because if that happens, we're in person. That's how it works.
And not only that, we do have the cues of, body language where we can kind of see a little bit better when one person is going to stop and the other person is going to start. So
all true.
Perhaps the edit will be easier. I don't know.
We'll all find out together, dear listeners.
We will. And maybe I'll find out today if I'm feeling ambitious, and maybe I'll wait till I get home and I can run this through Logic and clean it up a little bit, because another thing that we're doing is we're obviously using different recording equipment than we are used to. So that's going to be a little bit different. We are in a hotel room with an air conditioner running that I refuse to turn off.
It'll get too hot.
It will get too hot.
It'll get way too hot.
So we'll just have to deal with that. And again, maybe I clean up the audio, maybe I don't. But Eden, since you are the one responsible for us being here in San Diego, why don't you tell the listeners why we are in San Diego together?
So we are in San Diego. Adroit listeners, or maybe we'll say pop culture conscious listeners, might look at the published date of this episode and be like, oh my goodness, could it be that they are attending San Diego Comic-Con? And yes, dear listeners, that's where we're at. We're at San Diego Comic-Con. We had just wrapped up Sunday, day 4 of the con. We have been walking around. We've been going to a lot of panels. We've been doing a lot of retail therapy. We've been eating a lot of very, very thick pizza.
Thick pizza.
Which we'll tell you all about. But yeah, so here's the deal, listeners. As many of you know, I have a PhD in colonial Spanish American literature, but my dissertation was about comic books that use the pictorial and narrative traditions of the colonial and pre-Columbian era in order to talk about contemporary things that they're trying to grapple with. So that's what my dissertation was about. And so I do a lot of work in comics studies. I've done way more presentations at comics conferences, like comics academic conferences, than I have at Spanish academic conferences. And especially there's one big one for colonial era Spanish stuff. I've never even been to that conference. But I do go, I try to present when I can. I'm not a faculty member, so I do not have the impetus to publish and or perish, as those of you who know anything about academia might know. I'm not constrained by those sorts of things. I'm just an instructional designer. I just, work in IT technically, but I do still like to engage with academic work. And there is, in fact, as part of San Diego Comic-Con, there is an academic conference that happens during it. It's usually 15 panels and a poster session that goes during the entire time that Comic-Con is happening. And it's a legit, academic conference. It is, considered to be on the level with any of the other conferences that I could be attending. But you felicitously also get professional passes to Comic-Con for you and a guest. So this is actually the third time I've presented the Comic Arts Conference. The first time was in 2016 and then 2017.
So it's been a little bit.
It's been a minute. And so it was exciting. Once again, I'd been meaning to do, I was going to do it last year, but I just didn't get an abstract written in time. So I didn't go last year. But this year I was like, Peter and I had been talking on the podcast one day, and I said, hey, if I could get us tickets to Comic-Con, do you want to come?
And I said, abso-friggin-lutely.
It's a once in a lifetime experience.
It is.
Or thrice in a lifetime if you're one of the presenters.
There you go.
But so I was like, let's do this thing. Let's make this happen. So I submitted and my abstract was accepted. And so I got to come and present on Friday afternoon at Comic-Con. I wrote a new essay for that, something which was, again, it was just really nice to engage in that sort of practice again.
Mm-hmm.
I do a fair amount of writing for my job, but a lot of it, again, is like instructional design work or like course prep and things like that.
Sure.
I don't get to engage with like academic writing per se very much these days. So I was really excited to have the opportunity to write a paper again and then present this paper. And so that's how we got to come down here. Yeah. And then Peter was kind enough to come along. And so I didn't have to do this whole ding dang thing by myself because that would be boring.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see those people walking around by themselves and you're just like, I'm sorry, friend. Maybe you're okay with it, but it's just it's boring doing it by yourself. But it's a lot of fun with another person. I don't know. Yeah. How have you found it as we've been out here?
So it has been an experience. I am widely known by many people to be fairly solitary. I definitely find myself feeling anxiety in large groups of people. And I think this is one of the largest groups of people in a contained space I have probably ever been in.
Yeah.
The other times I can think of something that would come near this would be at the annual international, technically they call it the national meeting, but it's like 60% international American Neurological Association meetings, which I actually a number of years attended here at this conference center. And I will tell you that the main floor where we walked through today and yesterday and the day before, quite slowly because of the sheer mass of people, you don't have any problem moving through the main conference floor at a medical conference. It can be slightly busy, but you're never going to be moving slowly.
No.
So it was a lot of people, but it was fascinating. It was a lot of fun. The conference floor with all of the booths and everything is a total sensory overload. Very noisy, tons of people, so much visual arts and things like that on display as you're walking around. In addition to, you can't help but you're just seeing some, in many cases, really impressive and amazing cosplay. People who have spent who knows how much time and energy and effort in building and putting together really impressive costumes and things like that. So the whole time you're just walking around, it's my head just was constantly swiveling left and right because there was just so much to see.
Yeah. So how many people were at that national conference that you went to in this same place?
Oh, I don't know honestly how many go. It's in the low tens of thousands, maybe at most, maybe.
Just to put it into context for everyone, the latest numbers I could find was 2022. So post-pandemic, not as busy as it was today or last year. 135,000 people.
Uh-huh.
So just to put it into perspective, probably 8 to 10 times what was at the neurological conference.
At least, yeah.
It's very busy.
It is very busy. But yeah, it was a neat experience. We did some panels, some things we'll talk about a little bit more. But I felt like I got a good Comic-Con experience. And to answer anybody who may be asking, no, I did not dress up.
Unfortunately, neither of us cosplayed. It's not a thing I've ever done before.
Nor I.
it, I don't even dress up for Halloween,
Nor
so
do
I
I.
definitely don't dress up for not Halloween but Halloween costumes. So
Yeah.
yeah, we did not. I wore my T-shirt from the comic book store yesterday, and that was as intense as I got.
I mean, I repped a few different metal bands on
There you
different
go.
days.
There you go. It worked out great.
But yeah, so tell me, Eden, how did this year, how does it compare to previous ones? Because you went to a couple pre-pandemic, and
Yep.
so then this would be your first one post-pandemic.
Yeah.
Did you notice any changes, or was it about the same, or just any differences?
Not a ton, to be perfectly honest. It felt really similar. There were still like, here's the thing, dear listeners. I wish I were more conscientious about COVID stuff. I get it. I respect the hell out of the people who are still masking,
As do I.
but I'm also an asshole apparently because I just didn't. I just don't. And like I get it. I get it. I got COVID for the second time like a month ago. So that also added to me being like a little more like I don't think I'm going to wear a mask because I am like freshly off it. So I am my antibodies are in maximum repel mode. So I was like I should wear a mask, but I'm an asshole, so I'm not going to. But there was a fair amount of people who still chose to mask the whole time, which
There
again,
were, yeah.
I am
Lots of
impressed by.
KN95s and some cloth masks and stuff
The
like that.
occasional N95 where you're like, I'm
True,
sorry,
yeah,
bro,
a few true N95s.
you should not be wearing that anywhere because those are the most uncomfortable things in the world.
Yes, they are.
But
Yes, they are.
yeah, so that's a bit of a difference. But like in terms of the crowd size, it felt very similar to the previous years. Um, I will say it was a lot easier for us to get into Ballroom 20 than it was the last time I tried to get into Ballroom
Oh, yeah.
20. And I don't know if that was a matter of the particular shows we were getting in to see in Ballroom 20, and maybe it was busier on other days, or maybe like, because we went to Ballroom 20 yesterday,
Hmm.
Saturday, because we're recording this Sunday, and that's the big Hall H day. So I feel like that probably meant that Ballroom 20 was a little less busy
Sure.
because the people who were there for like the most Comic-Con-esque Comic-Con experience were waiting on Friday to get their little tickets so that they could go into Hall H today or on Saturday.
Yes, and to again preemptively answer any questions people may be having, no, we were not in Hall H when Robert Downey Jr. pulled off the Doom mask because while it would have been fun to try and fight in there, I personally, and I think you felt about the same, it's one of those, it would have been neat, but I didn't feel that I wanted to sacrifice literally my entire day
Yeah.
for that moment, which is what we would have needed to do.
Well, not even just the whole day. We would have needed to sacrifice the day before too.
Yeah.
You want to get in on Saturday, you have to line up on Friday to get the wristband that lets you get in line again on Saturday.
Yeah.
So it would have been especially hard because I presented midday on Friday. So
True.
you probably would have had to just go and sit in the line and get it while I left and did my presentation and then came back. And that like sucks because, I wanted you to be there for my
I
presentation.
mean, I wanted to be there for your presentation.
So
So,
we preemptively decided to eschew Hall H. And to be fair, I've never done Hall H. We thought about the first year I went in 2016, my friend Darren and I went. We were like, let's just go see what it's like. And we never went and looked at the line, but the line is the entire park to the south east of the convention center, just like row after row after row after row after row after row after row for like hundreds of feet. It's enormous. It's just wild how many people would be in that line. So, we took one look at that back in 2016. We were like, never mind.
yeah.
And that's why this year I was like, if you really want to, you can go do it. I'm not gonna.
No, that's totally fair. And like I say, this being, the first time I've gone to Comic-Con, I mean, and let's just be honest. If this had been a few years ago, I might have felt more strongly about doing that because
Sure.
you know that the Marvel panel is going to be crazy, and I was super excited for all that. But as you and I have discussed many times, at least for us, I think a lot of that shine has been worn off. And while I will still watch those things when it's convenient, like I don't feel that same drive to be involved and to be there. And
Yeah.
so the luster has faded a bit, and definitely enough that I just did. there were plenty of other things that were very interesting, that were fun, that were worth my time quite a bit more than, again, being in Hall H when some of these announcements and moments went down. Yeah, it would have been cool to see Harrison Ford come out, sure, because it's Harrison Ford. But at the same time, was it worth sacrificing what we would have needed to get there? Definitely not for me, and not at this point.
We got to do a lot of other cool things.
We did.
We joked a couple of times that you had like your list, like your checklist of like firsts you wanted to do while you were at Comic Con. Tell us about some of those and how we did them.
Well, so definitely, obviously, wanted to just walk the entire con floor, which we did a couple
of times.
But we went in the first day, you know, what was that? Friday?
It's Thursday.
Thursday, yeah, because that's right, it was Wednesday that I flew out. Jesus.
Time is an illusion.
Time is an illusion. It's all just blending together. But so Thursday, you know, we walked in and we started at one end and we weaved through every single aisle of booths kind of quickly, but like just walking through. And again, as I said, my head is going side to side to side to side, looking at all this stuff. And
I'm like making plans in my brain. I'm like, okay, I got to go back to that booth, and I got to go back to that booth, and I got to go back to that other booth.
And so that was definitely obviously one of the things that I wanted to experience. I wanted to just walk the conference floor, see what it's like, be in that mass of humanity, because I wanted to experience it, even though it scared the freaking crap out of me.
Wind around the lines to what? You don't know. You never know what any of the lines are for, but it's like start of line, end of line. You're like,
line break, line closed or capped. Like so many lines all over the place.
What?
No idea what these people are waiting for. So that was one of the things. We did that again a few times. Interesting to walk around and go through. Wanted to go to some of the smaller panels, and we did. We got into some of the smaller panels. You know, we totally.
Yeah. What were some of the cool panels that we saw that were the smaller ones that you liked?
Well, so for me specifically, I mean, you know, we did a kind of I thought it was a nice mix of. There were a few panels that we went to because there were ones that interested you. We went to those, and then kind of yesterday and today we went to some that were more interesting to me. So, for example, yesterday we went to a panel about the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And you know, Luke Gygax, Gary Gygax's son was there, and some other people who all kind of work in the industry. One guy who's written a bunch of I don't even remember how many D&D modules he said he'd written.
Oh, yeah, no, Jim's up. He doesn't write modules. The other guy writes.
The middle dude.
Yeah, the middle dude did D&D modules. He also wrote the back half of the Endless Quest series. You remember those books when you were kids?
Yeah.
And then he said Rose Estes was going to go to that conference.
I know. Like, we were like,
shit. I have 18 of Rose Estes books in my bedroom right now. I would take a stack of those to get signed.
Yeah. So that was fun. You know, again. Today we went to a couple that were about writing. So I like to write. I've written 2 books that I've completed. I haven't edited them yet. That is in process, but I have completed 2 novels at this point and write a bunch of other shorter things. And so there were some on the best, you know, it was writers sharing the best advice they've been given, which I thought was a very interesting one. Yeah. Got some points from that I wrote down and that I'll be thinking about and incorporating. The one we went to most recently was, you know, the idea was it was pitched as, you know, helping people, walking people through writing their first book from getting the idea to writing it to publishing it. It didn't quite fulfill that expectation, but, you know, still, I enjoy listening to people talk about their craft.
Yeah.
And then yesterday, you know, we made it to Ballroom 20.
Ballroom 20, for those of you who don't know, Hall H is the big boy. Hall H is where... You know, the Robert Downey Jr. reveal happened, or when they had Joel Kinnaman come out and say, "I'm playing Rick Flag in Peacemaker season 2" during the DC panel, or you know that sort of shit is what's happening in Hall H. It's the big boy place. Ballroom 20 is the slightly less big boy place.
Yeah.
So that is where most of the TV stuff, like the big name TV stuff, is usually happening in Ballroom 20. So, like the first year I came, me and my friend Darren and I waited in that line so that we could see all of the panels for all of the CW shows, which were plentiful in 2016. We were there for like 3 hours just watching panels about the different DC shows. Because it's like the Arrow panel, the Flash panel, the Supergirl panel. And so we were there for a long time for that. So that's what Ballroom 20 is. It's the second biggest room. It's where mostly it's TV stuff.
And that makes total sense now that you put it that way. We went, there was one in particular that I really wanted to see, and that was actually for Silo Season 2. Now, I will admit, I have not watched Silo Season 1 on Apple TV Plus. It is in my watch queue. However, I have read the books written by Hugh Howey, and so I have a fair amount of familiarity to that world and that story. And so I was interested. I'm like, oh, look, Hugh Howey's going to be there. Rebecca Ferguson's going to be there. Common was there. I'm like, great. That'll be fun to go to and kind of see some of those people and hear them. And so we made it to that one. But because we wanted to make sure we got there early and hit like the second half of an America Dad panel and then follow that up with a Family Guy panel. And then we were there when Critical Role was up talking about some of their stuff, including, Legend of Vox Machina and things like that. And so that was fun getting to go through, again, not the insane line where you've got to wait in a day before, but
you're still in line for 45 minutes.
But go upstairs, go outside, weave through this long chained off rope section, then get back inside and go back the entire same length of the conference center that you just went one direction until then you then get to another place where you weave back and forth. And then in groups, they're going to let you go across the hall and into Ballroom 20, and then they're going to stop you because they got to let people across traffic go. And then they're going to let a group in and then stop you. And so we kind of got a pretty big line. And again, we got to see people on, again, we saw, Rebecca Ferguson and some cool things there. And so that was another one of the things where I didn't want to fight the Hall H crowd, but I was hoping we could see something bigger like that, which we totally did.
We did. And again, even if it was stuff I don't really care about, I don't give two shits about Seth MacFarlane comedies. Right. The only Seth MacFarlane show I would ever bring myself to watch is The Orville, and only because everyone says by season 2, it's just a Star Trek show. Sure. It stopped even being like a parody of a Star Trek show by season 2. And you know what I kind of like sometimes? Some procedural sci-fi with a small budget. Because then you have to lean into writing good episodes because you don't have the budget to do like real weird shit every time.
Yeah.
So, I don't care about American Dad or Family Guy, but during the Family Guy panel, the lady who plays the wife Lois, did a whole parody version of the Billie Eilish "What Was I Made For" song about in the voice of her character, and then forgot the words halfway through and was like, "Ladies, help me here!" And no one knows the parody words that you've invented to the Billie Eilish song, and that was kind of delightful to just watch this woman who is clearly very talented, even if she's in a show I think is not very good, just do the damn thing. And that was just really funny.
Yeah.
And then, in the Silo panel, I came out of that Silo, I'd never even heard of that show till Peter was like, I want to go see the Silo panel. And I was like, the hell is Silo? Because I don't have Apple TV. I don't know what this is. But so we went to it and, they show us the season 1 recap. And I'm like, Tim Robbins is here? Common is here? Rebecca Ferguson is here? Maybe I should watch this show. And then they talked about the show, and the showrunner was there, and the author was there, and the 2 main stars, and Adam Savage was the moderator for this panel, and they had just really good rapport.
Yeah.
And they showed us a preview of season 2, and then they showed us an exclusive scene from season 2, and I was like, maybe I should watch this fucking show. And then it ended with Common doing a freestyle about being there, talking about the people on the panel with him just off the dome.
And it was tight.
Here's the thing. Common is a good freestyler. Famously for decades, everyone knows you don't want to get in a rap battle with Common because he freestyles really quick. Like he will put you on your back feet.
Oh yeah.
And like we saw that. Like he just made it up and rhymed words that I never in a million years would have tried to rhyme with one another.
Well, and you
There was a
could
bit of
tell.
slant rhyming, but like you just saw his mind just like boo, 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 and
Well,
just doing the damn thing.
and not only that, but like the other people up there on the panel are just like leaning back watching this happen, and Rebecca Ferguson's next to him, and she's like laughing and at the same time in awe, and like
It was
putting her
awesome.
hand on his shoulder she's, as he keeps going, and she's just like, how long can he keep going? And I mean, it wasn't too long, but
It was like 45,
yeah,
50
it was like
seconds.
this whole big thing, and he manages to like make this coherent, like rhyming thing, and everybody up on the panel is like, we did not know that was happening.
It was very cool.
So that kind of stuff, that was a blast. And look, we ate some con food.
We did.
We had some pretzels.
Yeah, so we ate pretzels nearly every day. Today's the only day we didn't get a pretzel.
It's true, we didn't. First day
regular day.
regular pretzels.
Yeah.
Second day, I grabbed a regular pretzel while you were getting ready, while you were going in before you were
I didn't have a pretzel on day
Yeah.
2.
And that was the disappointing pretzel. I will say Friday's pretzel was disappointing.
Yesterday's pretzel was really good though. I got the pepperoni and cheese pretzel.
It was breakfast, so I went with the cinnamon pretzel, and sort of wished I'd gone with the pepperoni pretzel.
The pepperoni. It was. Here's the thing. It was very expensive though, because also it's con food. So then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, this singular pretzel is $13. Okay.
And this bottle of Aquafina water is $6 or something.
Ugh.
$5. It's actually cheaper, $5 to get a Diet Pepsi, which I will admit to having drank 2 over the last course of the day, because that one, I mean, today it was just literally, I'm looking at the place where we were grabbing
They didn't
lunch,
even have
they didn't
water.
even have water. So I'm like, fine, I guess I'll get a Diet Pepsi. And yesterday we had some, what was it, Granny's?
It was called Grandma's
style
We had
pizza.
seen, so like, we had pretzels for breakfast that day instead, because we wanted to get there early because we wanted to make it to the D&D panel, because that was first thing 10 a.m.
Yep. And
So
that
we were
was,
like-
we were glad we got there, because that one
filled up.
it wasn't in as big a ballroom, but it was in one of the bigger rooms.
It was in room 6DE, which is the 4th biggest room. Hey, I know too much about this con now, folks. 6BCD is the 3rd biggest room. 6EF is the 4th biggest room, and that's where the D&D panel happened.
And it was completely
full to the brim.
packed.
So we had eschewed going out for breakfast that morning because we wanted to make sure to get there. So we had gotten the pretzels for breakfast. So then it was like, it's lunchtime. We don't want to eat pretzels again. Well, I probably would have fucked up another pretzel. It's fine.
I mean, I kind of could have gone for the.
Wish I'd gone.
Except here's the problem: they had at all of the pretzel places, they had the pepperoni pretzels first thing in the morning,
and the cinnamon pretzels, but by noon,
midday the pepperoni pretzels are gone,
and so are the
you
cinnamon.
mostly just have the regular. You might get lucky and see a cinnamon,
Yeah.
but like the pepperoni pretzels gone by the middle of the day. So we saw a sign.
Yeah, we
Grandma's
saw a
style
sign,
pizza.
grandma style pizza, and I admit I was intrigued, dear listeners. I was like, what is a grandma style pizza? So we went down to the main floor and it wasn't there, and we were like, oh, maybe it was in the middle. So we went back to the mezzanine level, which
because that, let me tell you again, as a first timer, that part's confusing. You've got the main floor with all the booths and everything, and then you got the escalators that are going to take you up to where all the panel rooms are,
the 2nd floor.
But then there's
this mezzanine
that you can only get to through some stairs or some escalators.
And apparently, looking at it, it looks like there's rooms off of it, but not rooms that anything was in. Rooms 12 through 19, not used for the con. But there was grandma style pizza. So we get in line for grandma style pizza. And it is
so it's like a Detroit style pizza, like rectangular.
A big old
kind
rectangle.
of a deeper dish.
And they pick up this thing that's legitimately a 9x9 square. It's the size of your 9x9 brownie pan of pizza. And they hand that to you, and you're like...
And it's got
okay,
a dozen large pepperoni slices on top.
And some cheese and some marinara. This thing was so thick. I was talking to my wife about it last night. And listeners, those of you who might not know my dear sweet wife, Cassie, she has a small mouth that does not open very wide.
She would have never been able to eat this pizza.
The joke when I was telling her about it last night was, you would not have been able to eat this pizza.
No.
There is no world where
No
your
way.
tiny mouth would open wide enough to fit this pizza. You can barely fit like a pan pizza.
No.
There's no world. It was at least 2.5,
I
3
mean,
inches thick.
it was especially at the crust end.
Yeah.
It was so thick. Now, it was decent,
It wasn't bad. It was not bad
but it
pizza.
was so much dough.
So bready, so many carbs.
It was,
And so yesterday we were so carbo loaded after we ate that pizza, then we went to the Ballroom 20 stuff. By the time Silo was over, we were both just like,
we
we
need
need some
meat.
protein.
We need meat.
We need something that'll stick in the system for longer.
So, of course, we had a barbecue place.
Yeah, we did, and it was good.
It was good. But no, like I say, it was kind of, those were sort of the things that I was looking for. And it delivered. It's been for me as a first timer, it has been a blast. Oh, and one other thing I forgot to mention. We're walking along the con floor yesterday, and all of a sudden we see a ton of people, phones up in the air. And of course, the people who work for the convention center, don't stop, keep moving, don't stop, keep moving.
Take as many pictures as you want, but keep on walking.
Keep on walking. So we're like, what the heck? Let's get close and let's see. So we get close, and
it's at the
Hulu.
it's at the big Hulu signing booth that's like smack dab in the middle of the ground floor, the exhibition floor.
And we walk by, and there's the whole cast of the, I don't know, is it ABC show or is it on? Yeah, so The Rookie, starring Nathan Fillion, who I'm a big fan of. Been a big fan since Firefly and Serenity.
Yeah.
My wife and I watched Castle, even after Castle got bad, because we liked Nathan Fillion.
You know, Castle did get bad. Here's the thing.
It jumped the shark.
And if you will, they won't they for too long, and then they do, then it gets boring.
It both jumped the shark and then kind of had the moonlighting syndrome.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The moonlighting syndrome, where moonlighting suddenly got bad when the couple got together.
Yep.
Happened in The Office too. Once Jim and Pam got together, you're like, this show sucks.
So, but still, Nathan Fillion. So we walked.
It was exciting.
We did not try and get in line and get an autograph because it was
already everlastingly too long. There was no world where we were going to be able to get an autograph. If they're already signing, we needed to be in line an hour ago.
But we walked past close enough to get some good pictures of Nathan Fillion and the cast of The Rookie. So we had our little celebrity moments. We had our big reveal moments. I mean, getting to see a scene from episode 1 of season 2 of Silo that will not be shown anywhere else until it debuts on November 15th or whatever it was.
And it was very fun. This is not a spoiler, folks, but like there was a new character that was in that scene who they then brought out on stage
and added to the
panel, who had not been there for the first half of it, even though they had joked, ha ha ha, he wanted to just sit out here in a sheet and then pull the sheet off at this point. But no, we made him wait backstage. And so like, y'all don't know who that person is, but we do because we were able to be there.
We got a reveal, we got a sneak peek, and then just got to hang out, and it has been a really
good relaxing.
It has, because
we've been. Here's the thing: we're not staying to con until 10 p.m. at night.
Oh gosh, no.
We're leaving at like 5, going to dinner, and coming back to the hotel room.
And what happened last night? We're sitting here in the hotel room last night. This is now our 3rd day, and. Now, folks, again, I just turned 48. Eden is 40.
Yeah, he'll be turning 41 later
this October.
Ooh.
So we are both
middle-aged.
40s, middle-aged officially. And so we get back to the hotel room, and I do a little writing, which I've been trying to do regularly. And then, like, Eden's reading. I think you were reading.
Yeah, I think I was reading a book.
You were reading a book. I kind of finish writing, look around, and I'm like, well, I guess it's time to get ready for bed. And then we look at the clock on the microwave end. What time was it, Eden?
6:57 p.m.
That's exact. It wasn't even 7 o'clock. We were both like, oh, shit. I guess it's not time to go to bed yet.
And then we both pulled out our phones, and approximately 2 minutes later, we found out about RDJ being Dr. Doom.
That's exactly right. And then we were speculating, and we were like, no, this can't be. And then we're seeing videos of him walking out pulling the mask off on the stage and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
One other fun thing we did get to do, and it's not really Comic-Con related, but it felt Comic-Con related, and that was Friday night. we went and saw Deadpool and Wolverine.
We did.
We went to a comic book movie
We did.
while we were at Comic-Con.
It was fun.
And we're not going to spoil it. This is not a Deadpool Wolverine thing, because honestly, there are a few things that have been spoiled, but there are a lot of things that happen, and we just we laughed and we turned to each other and we're like, you've got to be freaking kidding me, or holy shit, or I can't believe they did that.
There were a lot more cameos than even I expected there to be.
And those should be left as surprise for people to go see it on their own.
Absolutely.
But it was fun. We and of course we went to the 6 o'clock showing, so we were
home by 8:30 and ready to be in bed by 9.
Yeah, but no. What about you? Tell us a little bit. What I'd love to hear. I would love to hear about the experience of presenting at Comic-Con and anything else you want to talk about. But I definitely would like to hear you talk about presenting.
Absolutely. So you have probably never been to an academic conference before.
I mean,
you've been to professional conferences. That's a different creature. I don't know. How many people usually go to a presentation at a professional conference?
It depends on the presentation. At the rooms at, for example, the national AUA meeting, you'll have maybe up to a couple hundred in there.
Sure.
I generally don't go to the national meeting anymore. I generally go to the sectional meetings because they're both smaller, and every other year they're in Hawaii. So, I mean, come on. But those, the biggest ones, you'll have maybe a couple hundred people.
Sure.
Smaller ones, it'll be 100, maybe 50, maybe 100, maybe up to 150.
Sure.
Max.
So that's a professional conference.
Mm-hmm.
You've never been to an academic conference where presenting to 15 to 20 is a success. 15 to 20.
Look at how many people came to my
15
presentation.
to 20 is a success.
Oh, God.
I have been to a conference. I was presenting at the Kentucky Foreign Language Conference in 2013, 2014. It's a huge conference. It's enormous. There's so many panels. The fucking program is perfect bound. That's how big it is. It's so fat you can't even staple this shit. They have to bind it with glue. So that's how big KFLC is. And so we go, and I'm presenting this paper that I had written for a course that I cleaned up and all this sort of stuff. In the room, the moderator, me, the other 3 presenters, my wife.
No. I was hoping you were going to keep going.
No. There was one attendee, and that attendee was my dear sweet wife.
Oh, jeez.
That's the worst I've ever been to.
Sure.
That's the worst. That takes, bar none, the worst presentation experience I've ever had.
Now, see, I will say briefly, one of the reasons, particularly at the smaller conferences, the sectional conferences, it will still never be that low of attendance, is because, first of all, there aren't that many concurrent things going on.
Yeah.
Second of all, not at the national conference, but at the regional conferences, every session you go to counts as an hour of CME.
Which you have to have a certain amount.
You've got to, for the state, you have to have 20 a year, but for the American Board of Urology, you have to have 90 over 3 years. So
you got to get your 30. You want to get
maybe
your
it was
30
a 90 over 2. Anyway, I generally shoot. Personally, my target is 45 to 50 CME hours a year.
Sure.
But so if you go to enough of those, you should walk away from that conference with 25 to 30 CMEs.
So then you're halfway, 2/3 of the way to your goal.
So it's very easy. So people are motivated to go and sit there, even if it isn't something they're incredibly interested in, because you get an hour of CME.
Sure. Yeah. And again, the KFLC is a different creature because there are literally dozens of panels going on at once.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising to have 2 or 3. I went to a bunch of other panels. I went to, and the other thing about the KFLC is that it is a big mix of like grad students and professors from all levels of like tenured all the way down to master's students.
Gotcha.
So there's just a ton going on and so many people there, the vast majority of which are all just presenters themselves. Sure. So it's just not that many people with very few exceptions. But that's like the worst one. But I've been to other academic conferences. I've presented at academic conferences to 10 or 15 people and been like, okay, this was pretty good. the second big, actually the most important comics conference I've ever presented at. Because like the Comic Arts Conference that's part of San Diego Comic-Con is fun, but it's not like prestigious.
Sure.
Because it's fucking Comic-Con. And everyone knows that you really did this so you could go to Comic-Con. And we're also going to present as good work. And like you do present good work. Like you're still presenting interesting things that you care about.
Definitely.
But like you do it so you can go to Comic-Con, and everyone knows that.
Because I don't know how difficult it is to get tickets, but I understand
they sell out in like 8 to 9 hours usually.
Yeah.
Like they sell out very, very quickly. But so I have also presented at, because it was in Davenport, Iowa in 2019. I presented at ICAF, the International Comics Arts Forum. The only reason it was even as close to me as it was is because Brittany Tullis, who is a friend of mine, she was on my dissertation committee. She works at a small college out there, and she's also on the board of ICAF. And so normally, where does it go? It goes to the institutions of the folks on the board. And as people cycle on and cycle off, then they're like, come to my town. Because you know how to set up a conference if it's at your institution.
Right.
So I went to ICAF one year, and that was like huge because I presented to like 40 people. And I was like, yo. And to be fair, like, it's not a ton more here. There's probably 50 people in that room.
Oh, at least. I think you're underestimating.
And I asked, you were in the room. You have a better grasp on it than I did, maybe.
I didn't count numbers, but I will tell you, first of all, it was a good sized room.
Yeah. Oh, it's a very big room.
It's a big room. And I thought it was at least half full.
Yeah, probably.
I was
probably closer to like 80 to 100 people.
I would say, yeah.
I was a lot of people.
I was thinking, yeah, ballpark, somewhere around 100.
Yeah.
And there were more people, honestly. I'm going to be an ass. Sorry. There were more people than I thought would be there. Not for your particular one.
This is true.
Just the idea.
This is true. The first time I went, I felt the same way. The first year I went, and to be fair, the first year that I did it, I thought everyone was there to see my co-panelist, because I was on a panel with Trina Robbins, who is like one of the grand dames of comics. Like, this is a woman who created women's comics, which is a very influential zine comics from the 70s. This is the woman who fucking created Vampirella.
Oh, I did not know that.
This is the woman who created Action Girl comics in the 90s. She became a comics historian. Her book posthumously received, because she died just earlier this year, but her book posthumously received an Eisner because she became like a really big historian when it comes to like, especially Golden Age comics created by women. And so I thought that first year, it was probably about the same, about 100, 120 people. And I was like, surely everyone is here to see Trina Robbins.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next year, I didn't have a Trina Robbins on the panel, and it was still that many people. And then this year, I didn't have a Trina Robbins on the panel, and it was still that many people. So it's clearly like, sometimes people go to a thing because they're interested. I think sometimes people go to a thing because they want to sit down, because there's not a whole lot of places to sit. And sometimes you just, and the thing about the the convention center, very good AC. We were talking about it earlier. I have never been to a conference center with that many people that stays that acclimatized.
Yeah.
Because it gets a little warm on the con floor where there's like 70,000 people all at once, but
not uncomfortable.
Never uncomfortable. And in those rooms, it's like downright cold in a lot of those rooms.
It's nice. So, no, but I could tell there were a lot of people in there, and again, I'm saying this as an audience member.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people who genuinely seemed interested in the topics. I mean, there were interesting questions asked at the end. I could see people around me actually taking notes. People were writing things down. People were recording. I could see them on some of the slides actually doing the little zoom in to get a shot of the PowerPoint slide on their phone, that kind of stuff. And so clearly these were people who, yes, I think some of them maybe just wanted to sit down in an air-conditioned room on a padded seat, because otherwise you're literally sitting on the floor in the hall. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people, I mean, they seem very interested.
Yeah. And so, I was really excited to be able to do this presentation. I was even able to take a little more time and get a little more in depth because one of the panelists was unable to make it. So they were like, no, you can take 20 instead of 15 minutes. It's fine, which was nice. All three of the panelists all expanded to fill the time we were given because we're academics and that's our specialty. We're like, how long am I allowed to talk for? I'll talk for twice that if you let me. Like, that's just how it works.
Yeah.
Especially when we're presenting our research, it's usually stuff we're really interested in.
Sure.
So we like to talk about it. But yeah, so I presented, and so here's the funny thing. It's a very funny story.
It's the best part. It's the best part.
My presentation was about the lienzo de Tlaxcala, the Tlaxcalan linen, which is this document that was created in the 1550s that tells the story of the conquest of Mexico from the point of view from the people of the city of Tlaxcala, who were folks who allied with the Spanish against the other native people. And it's this big, big linen. It doesn't exist anymore, but we have copies of it and we understand how it was laid out. It was this huge document that is a series of panels, essentially. It looks like a big fancy comic if you are thinking in comics terms. And so I had read years ago when I was doing my dissertation, Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics, the Invisible Art, which asserts that a comic has to be, in order to fit his definition of a comic, is it needs to be a series of sequential juxtaposed images that tell a narrative and elicit a response from the viewer. Consequently, according to his definition, single panel cartoons are just that, cartoons, not comics. So the Family Circus, not a comic. However, he also posits that old documents that are a series of juxtaposed images are in fact comics. So his famous example is the Bayeux Tapestry. That's the one everyone remembers. So he claims the Bayeux Tapestry as a comic. And I've always thought that definition sucked.
And in a professional way, you said that.
I did. As collegiately as possible, I said, I don't agree with this definition.
You called out Scott McCloud.
But I'm going to put it to the test. And so then I talked about reading this linen as if it were a comic. And got some insights from it, made me think about it in some ways I had never thought about it before. But ultimately, my conclusion is it's still not a comic. Scott McCloud's definition is still wrong. And so I even jokingly said in the end, as I was vamping a little bit to help expand, to fill my time, I said, so, if I ever see Scott, it's on site. I said those words as a joke.
You did. You called him out. You told him you were going to throw down if I were to
ever meet this man who I had never met. And I thought to myself, surely I'll never meet Scott McCloud. It's on site, brother. I sit down.
Two other people
present. Some questions are asked. The panel ends. We're all chatting. Isn't this fun? Ha 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 ha. One of the organizers comes up. It's a guy, I can't think of his name, but he's one of the guys who organizes it, with a kind of diminutive older man behind him, and says, "Hey, Eden, I wanted to come say hi." And goddamn Scott McCloud walks up and is like, I tried to make it to your whole presentation, but I was making it over from the Marriott, and that's quite a distance. But I did catch the last half of it. It was really great. Thanks for sharing it. And I'm like, fuck, he was here in the room when I said it's on site. But we had a conversation. He was very collegiate and very gregarious about being like, yeah, we all disagree and it's fine. And I was like, it's true. Like I said, I learned some things about this document, even if I don't think it's a comic. Thinking about it like a comic still made me learn some things. So that was really great. And it's really nice to meet you. And then I was like, hey, can I take a picture with you? And he was like, sure, let's do it. But we should square up. And so the picture is the two of us fists going at each other.
It was great.
But
it was so good. It was so good.
I was so embarrassed. And then he was so cool about it. And it was just like an all-time experience for me. Yep. Fucking Scott McCloud. This is a big name in comics, man. Yeah. this is like understanding comics, even if I disagree with many of its assertions, is a fundamental text in understanding comics and like coming to understand the lexicon of how comics work and why they work the way they do and why we have the aesthetic responses to them that we do. So like this is a monumental piece of work. And so for him to show up and just be like, hey, it's okay, you disagree with me. I'm like, well, okay, I'm glad, Scott, thanks, man. But I've never had anything like that happen to me in my life.
It was wild. It was very exciting.
I have called out academics before in a conference, but they've never, ever
been in
the country, much less the room. I'm usually calling out people from Spain, saying these Spaniards are full of it, and they ain't coming to Kentucky.
No.
But
Scott McCloud was there to hear you call him out.
It was very funny.
Like I'm sitting in the audience and I'm watching this guy come up and I'm kind of hearing what he's saying and realization dawns and I'm like, oh my gosh, that dude right there behind him, that's Scott McCloud. And Eden just called him out.
Yeah.
That was fun. It was a lot of fun.
It was really fun. That was a delight. That was really, that was for me, part of me, highlight of the con was getting to call out Scott McCloud and say it's on site and then not actually fight him like I said I would.
What other things that were standouts for you?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. You know, we went to some fun panels. Some of them, it was like, I went to this hoping it would be interesting. It wasn't that interesting. It's fine.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just do that. I was able to find a lot of really cool stuff as we walked around the con. We should talk about the stuff that we bought. We got to talk about our merch, our merch perch.
I'll give mine because my merch haul is very, very short. I got a Loki from the series, the Disney Plus series, a Loki sweater/hoodie for one for my son. Told my wife that I had procured said Loki hoodie. Did not know if I was going to get anything for my wife because
we've been talking about it and you were like, I just don't know what to get.
Here's the thing, folks. My wife, she's a music nerd. Like she'll get super nerdy about like lots of music and give her some Bach, like she can just go off on Bach and stuff like that. But you know, pop culture, that kind of stuff, maybe not so much. But then I told her that I had picked up a Loki hoodie for Gareth, and immediately I would like a Loki hoodie. So we went back and got a second Loki hoodie.
It was very funny. We were on the escalator going up to the second floor when Peter got a text, oh, I want one of those. And then he was like, let's turn right back around. So we got immediately right back down so we could get it.
So I did that. And then for myself, because look, now there is so much. I mean, you want to buy comic books. There's comic books to buy all over the place.
Sure.
So you've got single issues all over the place, tons of booths selling single issues. Then you've got booths selling big omnibuses and, you know, graphic novels and all that kind of stuff. And you've got some indie booths and you've got bigger booths. And then you've got like clothes. And I mean, there's a couple like D&D type things selling dice.
There's a lot of
bags.
A lot of dice.
And dice trays and all this kind of stuff.
Lots of like vintage toys, import toys, secondhand toys.
Lots of toys, lots of figurines, lots of things like that.
Funko Pops galore.
Oh my gosh. People walking around with bags from the Funko Pop store. The bags are like 3.5, 4 feet tall.
Enormous.
Like ridiculous.
But almost always almost completely empty. They've gotten like one tiny little Funko Pop.
In the bottom of
this 5-foot-tall bag.
But so for me, there were a lot of things that I was like, well, that would be cool, but is it cool enough that I want to try and get it on the plane? Or, of course, you could ship it home, but is it cool enough that I want to pay FedEx to ship it to my house? And then where do I put it? And, you know, I have enough stuff that I was a little apprehensive. Didn't think, honestly, that I was going to get anything for myself. Yeah. And then this morning, we went over into Artist Alley. Mm-hmm. And in Artist Alley, there was an artist there, and she does kind of sci-fi art, and some of it is kind of cool, futuristic-looking sci-fi art, and some of it has cats with astronaut helmets on it, which that's cool, too. But she was selling... I think technically they were being listed as play mats, but you know, it's going to work really good. It's going to work really great as a desk mat.
Absolutely.
To put a keyboard and a mouse on or that sort of thing, with some of her art on it. And so we circled back around and she had 4 of them, one that was a cat on the moon and then 3 others that were kind of more outer space kind of, scenes, which is kind of artwork that still does stuff for me. I dig that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so we went and I was looking, and one guy had just bought one of those, so there were two more, and I'm looking at the two of them, and I'm like, well, which one do I like better? One is kind of a ship in outer space, and the other is looking at you like at the
It's like a cockpit.
it's like a cockpit type of thing. You're looking out of the ship into outer space. And then all of a sudden I was like, well, why not both? And as I'm saying, why not both? She's pulling up a new copy of the one that the other dude had just walked off with. And I'm like, heck, why not all three? And so I was like, I'll take all three of these. And here's the best part of it for me. So Artist Alley, Eden, describe for us Artist Alley, because you'll do a better job than me.
Yeah. So, like, again, like you said, some of these booths are run by huge corporations and they have an enormous footprint.
Yep.
The Marvel booth is enormous. The Image booth is gigantic. The Funko booth crosses over an aisle, and it's a disaster when anything's clearly like a special thing that people are in line for. But then there are the mid-tier people with like a decent sized booth. And then there's Artist Alley. 2 feet? Did she have
Yeah.
two, maybe
Two,
3
maybe
feet
3 feet wide.
of a space, and just
And they've
this
got a
tiny,
table space,
tiny
and
little
then
space, and then
like
the wall, the curtain
behind
behind them, and
that they
that's
can put
it.
stuff on.
And so like it's just very tiny, very intimate. Often it is the artist themselves
Yep.
right there at the booth selling those things to you.
Yep. And so that's who was there.
Yep.
This was the artist. This was her artwork. And I tell you what, it was so fun because when I said, I'll take all three, there was genuine joy on her face.
Yeah, her face lit the hell
Like,
up.
Genuine joy. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that right there, that's what I wanted. I've got some cool artwork bought directly from the person who made it. I paid her directly for it. And now I'll have some cool art underneath my computers and keyboards and stuff at home that'll remind me of that. And
Yeah.
that was super dope. So
Yeah,
that was
really
kind of my merch experience. I limited it a lot. Again, people are walking around with massive bags, sometimes full. People buy a lot of stuff.
They buy a lot
at
of stuff.
Comic-Con.
They buy a lot of stuff.
Like you can tell, these are people who they're saving up for this and getting ready.
There are people who spend thousands of dollars there.
Oh yeah, I believe it.
Easily.
So what about you? You found some cool things.
I did find some cool things. I tried to also limit myself, if I could, to just books. Because like I don't need more toys, really. I got enough chatarra in my house. I don't need more chatarra. But you know what I could always use more of? Books. My wife is dying a little inside hearing this, as we are contemplating needing to remove all of our bookshelves and replace them with some new bookshelves that are slightly larger, but one fewer of them. So I am about 2 to 3 weeks from right now going to have to go through every book I own and decide a keeper or a chucker.
It's a tough decision to make.
And so now I'm coming home with a considerable amount of things I think will probably all be keepers that I now have to find room for. But yeah, so we, I was able to find some stuff at the Yen Press booth. Some of it's stuff that is not out for order yet, or we haven't been able to get in the comic book store. I was able to, but the fun things that I was able to get, I went to the Kinokuniya booth, which they're like an importer of a lot of Japanese books. And I was able to get Ryoko Kui's art book in Japanese. She is the artist, the mangaka behind Delicious in Dungeon, listeners. If you are familiar with that comic, it's incredible. Or if you watch the show on Netflix, it's very fun. But I really love her art. And for years, she has posted on her Tumblr just like whatever she felt like doing. A lot of it is like, what if it's the characters from my comic, but in like modern fashion instead of medieval fashion? So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And like, we had talked about this in this Discord I'm in about like, oh man, it would be so much fun if they published this in English finally. Because like there's something to be said for having those art books in English so that you can enjoy the captions and stuff. Karo Mori, my all-time favorite artist, has a series called Scribbles, 3 volumes of which are out, which are legitimately just whatever is in her sketchbook. And then she'll write like a sentence or two about like, I don't know, I was going through a phase, I drew a lot of bunny girls, deal with it. And like, that's just her. Like, that's the way that she does. And like, that's the sort of captions they often are. It's like, I don't know, man. is there anything sexier than a woman in a pencil skirt? And you're like, no, Karamori, there's not. And so then she draws 10 pages of pictures of it. And so it's that sort of thing. And so people have been talking for months, years maybe, man, I sure wish they would bring that art book over. And we walked past the Kinokuniya book about booth, and they had it in Japanese. And I was like, I gotta get it. Yeah. It's an art book. It's not a story. I can look through it and intuit what's probably being said there. It's cool. I'm just gonna enjoy Rokukui's art. But then the booth that I was most excited to get to as well was the Silver Sprocket booth. Silver Sprocket is a comic store in San Francisco, as well as a small press comics publisher. I really like a lot of their work. I buy a lot of it. I have 2/3 of my staff recommends shelf at the comic book store is all Silver Sprocket stuff, because they're doing very cool, idiosyncratic, oftentimes queer comics that are just kind of pushing the norms of what people might expect from a comic. And so I went to their booth and I bought a ton of stuff. And it was just a real delight to be able to support them directly in that way. And like, I was talking with the dudes at the booth, and they were like, oh, I work at a comic store. We really love stocking your stuff. And one of the guys was like, oh, what comic book store do you work for? And I was like, oh, Daydreams Comics in Iowa City. And he was like, oh, I was just packing an order for them like 2 days ago. So like, yeah, tell, what was his name? Nathan, I think is the guy. Tell Nathan hi for me. And so like, how delightful is that? That like, these are the people who are so intimately involved in running this small press that they're like, oh yeah, I recognize your boss as like a person who orders things from us, so tell him hi from us. Yeah. And so that was just really cool. Also, it was very funny. I got there and I like paid in cash, and they did not have any like change, like coins. And so they were like, I don't have a dime to give you. And I was like, it's fine. And then they were like, take this fidget spinner instead. And so then I walked around the last 2 days.
Fidget spinner.
Yeah, so I've been walking around the last 2 days with that fidget spinner in my pocket or my hand, just kind of like fiddling with it. So that's been delightful. Yeah. And that's kind of all I got. I got a bunch of books I'm very excited to take home and read.
Yeah. I mean, it's been interesting. And I think the most fun thing for me about this is, I'm not as into a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. It is, to some degree, unless you're dead inside. So if you don't feel this way, listener, you're dead inside. But it is, to some degree, it is fun and inspiring to be around people who care passionately about whatever it is they're doing.
Absolutely.
And that's what this is.
Absolutely.
That's what this is. Yeah, you've got the big things and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think those people don't care. No. I mean, I think, again, let's use the silo as an example. Do I think that Rebecca Ferguson cares a lot? Did she say she does? Of course she said she does.
But she's also a producer on that show, so obviously she cares. Correct. If she didn't care, she'd just be like, no, I'm just a star. Yeah. But she's also producing the show, so she has a financial stake in its success in a way that an actor doesn't. She cares about this show being good.
And you look at the Family Guy and the American Dad. Again, I'm not a fan of either of those, but those have been around for 20 and 22, 3, 4, whatever, 25 years was Family Guy.
Yeah.
And so these are people who have inhabited these characters for so long that you gotta believe they care.
Absolutely.
And so you've got, even on the bigger stages, you've got people who care, but then you're going to things like your presentation. It's people presenting about things they care about.
Well, I mean, that middle dude, he's not a comic scholar.
Yeah.
He's like a biomed or some shit like that. I don't remember what it was, public health.
Yeah.
But he just really likes comics. So he's like, well, I'm going to submit to this conference so I can talk about comics that I care about. And that's delightful. Yeah. That's delightful that he felt comfortable enough to do that. And that they were like, yeah, that's not your feeling. It doesn't matter. Talk to us about this stuff.
Exactly. And, the D&D one, hearing these people talk about how tabletop role-playing games, and of course, they were very good at saying TTRPGs, and especially D&D. They know where they are.
But they know the panel they're on.
But them being able to talk about, no, this is how this thing has impacted my life. And this is how it's become an important part of my life. And you see people just walking around on the floor. And I mean, the people who are putting together some of these elaborate costumes, clearly, they care. And
You don't make a whole Kyugoji costume. I saw that dude in the full like Kyugoji Godzilla costume, and you're like, you made that, dude.
Yeah.
You made that.
And so for me, I think that was the most, again, kind of impressive and inspiring part of this is when it gets right down to it. I know, I would doubt that anyone who would be listening to this podcast is going to have these feelings.
Sure.
Because clearly we're all nerds here to some degree about certain things. But it's interesting. This harkens back to some degree to the conversation you and I had a number of episodes ago, and I was telling you about going down the Rush reaction rabbit hole on YouTube.
Sure.
And Rush, a band that we both really cared about, still care about, the highly influential, even if we don't listen to them as often as we used to, highly influential, I think, in our musical tastes and how we approach music.
Yeah.
But always sort of the weird rock band. And if you listen to it, you were a nerd and you were a loser, like negative nerd. This is back in the time, like when nerd was a pejorative.
Yeah.
And now it's like nerd literally is like oh, cool, you're a nerd too.
Yeah.
And you think about comic books and they were incredibly, present. They were still very much marginalized, to, not part of accepted pop culture. They were like, this is what the weird people check out is the comic books back in the, 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, again, they were there, they were always present, but they weren't really kind of mainstream. And
today, Deadpool and Wolverine is the best-selling movie in America and is probably going to crest a billy if if the projections hold out.
And the cool thing about that is, as I think one of the authors in one of our other panels, not specifically about comics, but as they mentioned, rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah.
And so now that Marvel has become the juggernaut that it has, now that other types of sort of similar media have become more widely accepted, you get people who are embracing these things that they love and it being celebrated.
Yeah.
And not denigrated.
Yeah.
And I think that was really, again, it was inspiring for me to see this. And okay, so I still have a mental block about the fact that I have written 2 books and that I like to write.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that says that's a weird thing. You're weird because you like that and you do that.
It wasn't weird where we were at the last 4 days.
You go and you're in these 2 panels about writing books and they're almost completely packed.
Yeah.
With a few hundred people who care about the same thing.
Every one of them, even if they are not writers, 95% of the people in that room are writers or aspiring writers themselves.
Exactly.
And B, even if they're not, they care a lot about it or they wouldn't be there.
For sure.
And they respect the hell out of the people who do write stories, even if they're not writers themselves.
And I think for me, so here's my closing statements on the Comic-Con experience.
Yes.
It was incredibly, first of all, it was a blast. I had a ton of fun. Thank you so much for the invitation.
I'm so glad you came. I think it's been a blast.
I have thoroughly enjoyed it. It is one of those experiences that I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. I'm glad that I've got this in my back pocket as experiences to look back on.
Yeah.
But it was incredibly, I mean, and I read all of here's how many people go and it's this busy, but until you get there, you don't appreciate it.
Yeah.
The sheer number of people who make the time, make the effort to come both to display, to present as exhibitors, but to be there because they go, these are things that mean a lot to me.
Yeah.
And life is tough sometimes.
Yeah.
And we've got to have things that help us get through this. And it was a blast to be around more than 100,000 people who are like, these are things that help us get through the bullshit that life throws at us and still smile and still be happy. And nobody's there looking at somebody who's in an elaborate costume going, oh, you're weird. People are looking at like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. Can I get a picture with you? Can I just celebrating what people love and their passions, no matter kind of how off the quote unquote beaten path those things might be.
Absolutely.
And that's awesome. And I think it needs to be celebrated. And that for me was the thing to make me actually come back and go, hey, you know what? It's okay that I go and play D&D multiple times a month with a group of middle-aged men. And that's not something to think is embarrassing or weird.
Yeah.
And it's okay for me to be like, no, hell yeah, I've written 2 books. I haven't finished revising them, but I've written 2 books.
Hell yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. And to go, that's cool. I can celebrate those things that, in part because I grew up in that time period where those things were not considered normal. They were not considered mainstream, and that they don't need to still be mainstream, but it was not, it was much less accepted to not be mainstream
Yeah.
than it is now.
Yeah.
And so that for me, I think was incredibly inspiring. And it was great. I loved it.
Yeah. Well, and like it is mainstream now.
It is.
Like it is fundamentally mainstream. That Critical Role panel was very full, and all those people are there because they like to watch those people play D&D on camera with each other.
Totally.
So like you shouldn't be ashamed that you, if anything, you should be like, how can I monetize? Don't monetize. Don't, there's enough actual play shows. We don't need any more we don't need any more actual play shows. But
I would agree.
But you can definitely play with your friends and it can be cool.
It can. And again, it was a really neat celebration of things that people give a shit about.
Yeah.
And as long as, look, here's my little caveat, as long as it isn't hurting somebody else or taking away their rights and freedoms, I love when people are passionate about something.
Absolutely.
If you're passionate about those things, you need to get your head screwed on straight and stop being a shyster. But anyway,
yeah,
it's cool.
And it's just like, and I think that part of the fun for me, especially as an academic, is going to the Comic Arts Conference panel and being like, the things these people are passionate about are still weird. I'm passionate about 16th century linen because I think it's fucking cool. And like looking at this thing and being like, okay, how is this grappling with its contemporary documents and that sort of thing? That remains, dear listeners, pretty fringe. Although there were 100 people in that audience to hear me talk about my
There totally were. There totally was.
So, but like that's just as much fun too, to just be like, the people enjoy these things and they're able to share in their love for these things and in their enthusiasm about these things. And it's just like, it's not like anything I've ever done before. It's really cool.
It really and truly felt to me like the largest judgment-free zone I've ever been in.
There you go.
And I mean, come on, what could the world use a hell of a lot more of? Us not judging each other.
Absolutely.
So it was great. I loved it. And it has been, it's been an awesome experience. So
yeah, it's been very, very fun. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it was great. So, well, we'll wrap it up there and we'll be back in another couple of weeks. We did get a little off in terms of our schedule. We were going to try and record last week, and then Eden was getting ready for this, and I had a swim meet to go to, and then it was this week, and it was one of these things where we finally just talked at kind of the end of last week, the beginning of this, I guess now that it's Sunday, beginning of last week, we were like, look, let's do an in-person record together. I've got these cool little DJI mics that we use that hopefully still probably sounds a little different than usual, but I think they should still sound good. They're nice little mics. And I'm like, that'd be a blast. Let's record in person. Let's talk about Comic-Con. So we'll be back in another couple of weeks with a new episode. And again, thanks for listening. Please reach out at feedback@themiddleofculture.com, and we'll chat again in a few weeks.
Talk to me about weird comics.